Hello everyone, and welcome back to my yearly roundup of all the weird news that has happened in 2024. I'm back today with a few more weird tales from the year just past. This isn't your usual news roundup, this is strictly the stuff that makes you go, what? As quite frankly, the regular news is far too depressing and genuinely terrifying. So instead, we'll be exploring a few lighter, weird and wonderful stories that may have not made it into the regular newspaper during 2024. Now that's not to say that these stories don't dally with the dark side, because they most definitely do. But there's also some light-hearted strangeness too. But don't worry, if anything is going to be hideously awful, then I'll give you a heads up first. So with the disclaimer out of the way, let's jump into October. Before we kick off today's stories, if you are new here, then hi, my name's Nikki and I make podcasts, YouTube videos and TikToks about all sorts of weird stuff. So if you're into that, which I have a sneaking suspicion that you might be, then please hit subscribe so we can hang out together again. And if you're not new here, then welcome back, old fiend. Nice to see you again. Now, this series takes a lot of planning and effort to produce, and it's just me making everything. So if you fancy supporting what I make to help me create this series and beyond, then please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Macabre London for lots of bonus content. Now, let's get into the episode. Now, there's few things in the world that I love more than cheese. I'm a huge fan of the stuff, and every year there's one particular dairy dealer that I support at Christmas time, and that's Neal's Yard. Now, this isn't an advert, this is in fact our first story of the episode, as my beloved cheesemongers had a terrible scam befall them in October of 2024, which saw them hundreds of thousands of pounds down, all because someone had stolen their cheese. During the summer, Neal's Yard had been contacted by someone who they thought was a wholesaler/dealer of artisanal cheeses. They set up a deal in which the buyer requested 950 full wheels of cheese be delivered to a warehouse in London, and from there they would be sent to Europe to be sold on. Neal's Yard, which acted as a broker for the deal, had to contact several cheesemakers in the UK and ask them to assist them. They were all super excited as this was a huge deal and would have made a big financial injection into their independent businesses. As the cheesemakers began shipping what would cumulatively measure 22 metric tons of cheese to Neal's Yard Dairy, they were happy in knowing they'd soon be paid for their deal. After Neal's Yard had arranged the deal and delivered all the cheese to the wholesaler, they were happy everything had gone well. But then, when it came to the matter of payment, the invoice, which came in at around £350,000, went unpaid. It didn't take long for the cheesemongers to realise that they'd been duped, and the cheese had been stolen and was now headed for the black market. As soon as Neal's Yard realised what happened, they reported the crime and were assured that the police were on the case. In the meantime, the artisans got on to their friends in the food industry and asked them to keep their ears to the ground for cheap cheese being offered, wheels of cheddar being sold for next to nothing, or suspicious amounts of good quality grated cheese being offered. It didn't take long before celebrity chefs were on the case as well, posting to social media, and Jamie Oliver used his 10 million followers to go and support Neal's Yard, to tell them to go and support Neal's Yard and to buy some of their products. The cheese shop was mobbed by customers and they were swamped with online orders, and the general public rallied together to make sure the financial losses they'd encountered were well and truly bolstered to save the institution from going under. And in an incredibly honourable and selfless act, Neal's yard made sure all of their suppliers were paid and footed the whole bill to stop the smaller cogs in their supply chain from going under. Now, whilst that was all going on, the police were working away in trying to track down old Cheesy Jim who'd set up the whole heist in the first place. They struck liquid gold and announced they'd arrested a 63-year-old man on suspicion of the crime, and he was later released on bail. At the time of writing, there's not yet been an update on the case, so I assume proceedings are underway to try and get justice for those involved. So this begs the question, why use the food industry to carry out a crime like this when it seems more lucrative to rob something more valuable than cheese? Well, firstly, I think this case highlights the protections and checks in order were seemingly easily taken advantage of and may not have been quite as rigorous as something of higher value. The ability to resell edible items is a very smart idea, as it's guaranteed the evidence will be gotten rid of, and it's easy to disguise the items, cut off tags, change its very makeup, and it still holds value, which if this was a priceless painting or designer clothes, wouldn't be the case. So, as this unbrielievable case is still in progress, let's hope the perpetrators get their just desserts soon, as I doubt they're wanting a cheese board. The next story today is a bit of a wild one, or should that be domesticated one? A woman in Bloomington in Minnesota was seen walking down a road, walking what was two dogs. But when a passerby took a second look, they realised that in fact one of the animals wasn't actually a dog, it was a sheep. The woman was out walking her large white dog and also just happened to have another equally sized white animal with her. The police were called as the person believed that the sheep may well have been liberated from a nearby farm and just wanted to alert the authorities so they could check things out. When police did indeed track down the woman, her dog and her sheep, all out for a walk, they asked her if the sheep was hers. She said she just bought the sheep from the nearby farm and was headed home with it. But it didn't take long for officers to call the farm, who said they hadn't actually sold a sheep to anyone, and the animal was taken back. What had initially happened was that the woman had walked by the field, used a strap from her bag to tie around the sheep's neck, which incidentally turned out to be a ram, and then she dragged it through the fence. The police managed to track down a man who'd been with the woman when she stole the sheep, and he unceremoniously ratted her out and told them everything, and that she'd indeed stolen the sheep by dragging it through the fence and had been quite boisterous with the animal, and he feared that she was going to strangle it with the bag strap. With the crime being confirmed, the police arrested the woman, and she was later charged with livestock rustling. The sheep was safely returned to the farm and had no lasting damage after his ordeal, and is now doing fine. So, this sounds like a fairly standard, albeit backwards, crime, but the strange thing about it was that the 42-year-old woman named Mandy K. Bowers just so happened to have a sheep tattooed on her face. Yes, Mandy clearly loves sheep so much, she not only decided to steal one, but she also wanted to put one on her face for the world to see. Now, I'm not an ink shamer, but I think the chances are if you're going to try and cover up stealing a sheep, maybe firstly do a little bit of cover up on your sheep face tattoo. After many patrons dined out at a well-known pizza joint in Staunton, Wisconsin, known as Yeti's, customers didn't realise they'd get more than they bargained for. After 5 diners had to be transported from the restaurant after becoming ill, the health agency immediately shut the restaurant for fears of a possible foodborne illness exposure. As the 5 diners were in hospital, one of them described their symptoms: nausea, anxiety, but also feeling very, very calm. He said it was almost as if he'd eaten an edible of the green variety. With that in mind, investigators returned to the kitchen and carried out some tests. They did These did indeed come back positive for THC, the psychoactive compound which is present in marijuana. When the pizzas were checked, it seemed they'd been somehow contaminated by THC. As it turned out, the pizzas were made in a commercial kitchen, which also made psychoactive products for another business, and there had been a mix-up. When the pizza chef who was responsible for making just the pizzas ran out of oil, he grabbed a can from another area of the commercial kitchen. Thinking it was just regular oil, he didn't read anything on the label, but it turned out to be Delta-9 THC oil, which the other business had been using to create space cakes. So the unwitting patrons of the pizza parlour unknowingly ate dosed pies and then were confused about what was going on. Now, it's important to note that there is no possible chance of eating too much THC, and whilst it may be uncomfortable to experience, it's impossible to take a lethal dose because it can't kill you, but you will see the devil, and he'll try and rip your heart out through your kneecaps. So, after the accidental incident in which 60 contaminated pizzas were served, it seemed everyone was fine, and the health department just issued the restaurant to give the premises a deep clean. So instead of a pizza pie, the residents got pizza high, and I'm sure they'll definitely reconsider visiting this pizza joint any time soon. Sorry, it's a very punny episode today, I just can't help it. Thanks for joining me for that selection of weird stories. I hope you enjoyed them, and if you did, there'll be more along soon, so make sure you're subscribed or following if you're not already to keep up with the series. If you like the show and what I make in general and want it to continue, then please consider becoming a Patreon supporter like our executive Patreon producers, Christina, Christoph, Heather's Leg, Lisa, Mary, Ravel, Sally, Sam, Sarah, Terry and Veronica, and all of our other patrons too. If you sign up to Patreon, you get access to my other podcast, Having a Problem, which is a lot of silly historical-based fun, hosted with my fiancé Neal, plus hours of other bonus content too. If you'd rather just send a tip or a little Christmas gift from my Amazon wishlist, then I would massively appreciate that too, and I'll leave all the links in the show notes in case you want to check them out. And thanks very much for letting me know that the wishlist link was broken, I didn't realise. An enormous thank you for even considering doing any of those things, particularly when I know things are tight for a lot of people, so please don't send anything if you can't afford it. Of course, there's all the free things such as sharing the show around, telling your friends, leaving a comment and reposting my social media posts. All of that is far more helpful than you know. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I've been Nikki Druce. Remember to stay spooky, and I'll see you ghouls next time for November.